Okay, connecting. We'll get the music. Okay, now Facebook looks like they're coming up. All right, guys, I just got to connect the chat. We'll be good to go. I'll let you know.
Yep.
Hey guys, just letting everyone know that we'll be starting this week's episode of Black Republican, Black Democrat very soon. We have a great episode this week. We have candidate for Brooklyn Park Mayor Hollis Winston, and of course the banter and arguing that you've come to love from AK and Jamar. Okay, gentlemen, the show is yours.
Welcome to Black Republican, Black Democrat. I'll be your co-host tonight, Jamar Nelson.
I'm your other co-host, AK Kamara.
I almost said my whole name.
You almost said your whole name?
I'm used to, at work, I'm used to saying that. So, I'm just Jamar.
You're just Jamar. That's right.
Jamar.
Just Jamar. How you doing, man?
Man, I can't call it. What you up to?
I had a birthday.
You know what? You did, and then mine's next Tuesday. So, we'll be off air, but by the time we come back, I'll be a year older.
So kind of when we have our shows, there's actually 4 of us that are debating and arguing.
True.
Because we're both Geminis.
True. No doubt about it. And I'm a real Gemini.
Yeah, no, it was great, man. Family, my wife's family was in town. I shouted out my niece last week. She got a kick out of it. And then on my birthday, a lot of years, it falls on the same weekend as Good Neighbor Days. So up in Hugo.
Good what?
Good Neighbor Days. So up in Hugo, which is an amazing community. I don't live there anymore. I live in Forest Lake now, which I think is also going to be an amazing community. We have kind of like a local town festival. And I'm part of the Lions Club.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
Because they need a local Negro to be a part of the show that they have. You
want to know what's crazy though about that? Is that there's a guy named Chef Hot Hands. And he's a brother.
Okay.
And he had his whole family out there. He was making ribs.
Oh.
And it was good.
His ribs weren't my ribs, though.
They were good, bro.
They weren't my ribs.
They were good, and they had all this different stuff. But so I always volunteer for that, and like every other year, it falls on my birthday. So I spent my day volunteering my time, giving to my community.
On your birthday.
And then running something called the Mouse Game, which we won't talk about, but it's a very awesome game. So that was my birthday weekend, man. I'm 38.
Well, happy belated,
Thank you, brother.
And so, God is good. You had 38 years and, all that you've been through and seen, you're here.
I'm here, man.
You know
I'm kicking. My sciatic still acting up once in a while. That's the old age kicking in.
Yeah, exactly. Which he tried to blame it on my car when we were traveling together.
I think your car exacerbated kicked it off or whatever it was, man.
I drive a luxury vehicle. It did not. It's gonna, it gives you it has the curves to caress the body.
So low, man, compared to my car, man. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure if you already haven't hit that like button, hit that share button, please do. We have a great show lined up. If you haven't had a chance, we ask that you please visit our link tree.
Yes.
Because if you like what we do, if you like how we further political discourse, even though we disagree on a lot of things, please visit our link tree. By going to our link tree, it's going to get you connected with all of our socials, our TikTok, our YouTube, our Instagram. But most importantly, there's a button that says Patreon. And what that allows you to do is become a contributor to this show. If you like what we do, please consider becoming a contributor. 100% of your contribution goes to actually produce this show. And so if there's something that you like, please share that Patreon link with your friends and your family. When you're done doing that, what I want you to do is visit this amazing store that's also a sponsor. If you need some milk, you need some postage, you need some money orders.
You need some money orders?
Where you going to go?
The Weber Mart.
The what?
The Weber Mart.
Why should people go to the Weber Mart, man?
You should go to the Weber Mart because it's the best one-stop shop on the north side, in the city, but on the north side especially. Listen, you can, as you just said, you got so many amenities you can go and get. You can get postage there. You can pick up packages, have packages delivered, and all of the conveniences that you want there. And a grocery store, eggs, bread, meat, things of that nature, cigarettes, things of that nature, you can buy there too. He has a tobacco shop. All right,
where's that again?
The Weber Mart.
The Weber Mart. We also want to announce a new sponsor, brand new sponsor we just
Indeed.
picked up, and it's really amazing. You've seen him before on one of our shows. He was an attorney general candidate. His name is Dennis Smith, and he's actually going to be sponsoring the show. He has a law office. He supports our mission to actually bring back civility and have meaningful conversations while having political discourse. Now, if you are yourself looking for a will, you need some direction on a healthcare directive, a trust, he can help you with that and your small business. So please give Dennis a call at 612-889-3971 or send him an email at DennisSmithLawMN.com. Again, that's Dennis@SmithLawMN.com. I'll get it right next time. Give Dennis a call. He's our new sponsor, also a friend of the show. So please, again, patronize if you have any questions about those topics.
Especially if you're in legal trouble. Give him a dollar, and he can help you. Give him a dollar, he can help you. Man, you know what, bro? Thank you to our new sponsor and sponsors of the show. And then thank you guys for hanging in there with us. Every single week, you guys come back. You know, when we're not here, you guys miss us like we miss you. And so we want to appreciate you guys for hanging in there with us. And then let's remember that, you know, in July, we'll dedicate a show just to you guys so we can have fan feedback and things of that nature. So that'll be coming up soon, too. But, of course, this is a political show, so we've got political discourse. And the way we keep political discourse alive is by supporting Black Republican, Black Democrat.
Absolutely. So today it came out that the officer that was involved in the Patrick Loyola case in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that he got fired. Now, on the show, we actually never talked about it.
We did not.
We didn't talk about it. For a refresher, about 2 months ago, black man gets pulled over in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He tussles with the police. He runs away, and he ended up getting shot and killed. And the video that came out kind of showed the beginning of the interaction. Body cam got knocked off. The person that was in the car with him was filming, and basically the actual end of the interaction where Patrick was killed was not on camera. So you can still hear the audio. And so this is interesting that, you know, this is a case that we never really talked about. I watched the video, and I keep coming back kind of to the same point that I've mentioned to you before about not blaming the victim, but putting things in perspective, that if someone would comply, it'd be different. But in this case, you had the DA and I believe the Michigan Attorney General, along with the Department of Justice, or not the Department of Justice, but their state police investigated, and they came up with charges. So that officer is charged with second-degree murder, and then today they announced that they also fired him. So yeah, man, it's kind of a crazy story, and I think, like a lot of other stories, we have to wait to see what all comes out, the actual evidence, the state of mind, things like that. But he got shot in the back of the head.
Well, then that tells you everything. That tells you everything. And look, again, you know, black folks are sick and tired of saying that these things happen. And then folks are poo-pooing the fact that or they say the word, which is so insulting, to say comply. You don't have to not be complying in order to get shot or harmed or assaulted by a police officer. That's just it. I have 13 stitches, a scar from 13 stitches in my head from laying on my couch at 4 in the morning, getting assaulted by the Minneapolis police because they thought I was playing sleep at 4 in the morning. This happens all the time. Here's your evidence that you and some folks ask for when you talk about racism or this is it. This is your evidence of even if the guy ran, in too many cases, brothers run or people run, you don't shoot them in the back. You can tase them if you want them to seriously stop, then you tase them. They'll fall instantly. But to shoot them in the back shows to me malice intent and a sure reckless disregard of the life of that person, of the victim.
So, this case, again, when you watch the video, when I talk about complying, I'm not saying in this case, this man lost his life, his family is forever changed. I don't ever want to see someone die. I don't. But I understand that there are certain cases in which use of that type of force is justified, lethal force. In this case,
but here's the thing though, AK, officers initiate contact.
Yeah.
They initiate being strong-armed. Bro, I weigh 173 pounds. Sure, I think I can fight a little. But most officers that are your size or bigger, or just an officer, always think that they can intimidate you. So they give you the mouth, the disrespect of not treating you like a citizen. Doesn't matter your color all the time, just not treating you as a citizen, a tax-paying citizen, or whether you're not.
Yeah.
They initiate things, bro. So that's what I'm saying to you. And you've been a part of police injustice, of being harassed. And what were you doing? Probably nothing. And even if you're committing a crime, does that mean you go above and beyond to apprehend me, to disrespect? We talk about no knock warrants.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, bro. This is why I understand people last year wanted to rid themselves of a police department. We can't do it. But I understand why. This is the reason why. Because black and brown people have been saying for years, since the 60s and 70s, beyond that, but especially over the last 70 years, we've been saying that officers kill without regard, bro. And so even if Laoya, Patrick, initiated contact and was fighting this officer, did he deserve to die?
So here's the part. I was 100%, and again, these details will come out, but I was 100% on board with how the stop began, right? He approaches him, tells him to give the ID. The dude's like kind of skittish. You see he's going to probably take off. He takes off. The cop catches him. They start tussling on the ground. The officer discharges his taser, and Loyola is not stopping because, like, he basically...
So wait a minute. I'm sorry. You're saying that saying that he did, or you're saying this?
He did. He discharged his taser twice. So, like, all of that, I was like, okay, he's going to get him. The part that is still hard for me to wrap my mind around, the way that it ended and how Patrick died, is that the cop was on his back.
On Loyola's back.
On Loyola's back.
Yes.
Right? And the cop says that he took his taser, and that's when he pulled his weapon. He shot him in the back head. It's hard for me to understand that, like, you have him, you're on his back, and you've discharged your taser twice, and I think most of these tasers only carry 2. And again, I don't know, maybe this is a special new taser that has like 50 charges. I don't know. But you're on his back, and when you're fighting someone, if you have back control, you
almost won the fight.
The news came out that his blood alcohol was 3 times the legal limit.
Loyola's.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just, again, I want to see what it says, because you know me, I'm a guy that says I want the justice system to work. I want to hear the evidence as it's presented, but I can't understand. It reminds me of a case in my hometown. I didn't know the young man, but it's a cousin of my godson, actually, and officer got involved in an altercation, and same thing, he basically shot this young man in the back of the head. Now, the officer was cleared and everything, but his name is Danny Solway. And again, it's hard for me to imagine, like, at what point you have someone on the ground and then you have to shoot them in the back of the head if they don't, again, I want to see what happens. But in this case, like, I will say,
I don't ever see how an officer could shoot someone in the back.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Point blank, man. It was like
yes,
literally.
Or like I don't
blank,
remember the other victim's name. A couple of years ago, remember when the neighbor caught the officer shooting the guy that was running away from him in the back several times, right?
Yeah.
Or like I keep forgetting these victims' names because there's been so many of them. The young man in Chicago when Rahm Emanuel was mayor, how they lied about that young man and how the video showed that they shot this guy several times when he did nothing, right? Well, he did have a knife, but they said he lunged at them and so on and so forth. When the video clearly showed that he was having a mental episode, and that's what I'm saying, AK. That's why I hope that every police department does incorporate some type of what are they calling them now? Mental advocates or something.
Sure.
Because we do know that black and brown people suffer. Everyone does, but especially prevalency in our neighborhood, in our community of bipolarism and other different underlying diseases, right?
And I think it's also not. It's more stigmatized. Whereas
absolutely.
Like again, I don't like to play the race card, but in non-black communities, mental health is more openly accepted. In black communities,
no, we don't.
There still is a stigma.
Absolutely, you don't want to go see a psychiatrist. No, that's true. No doubt about that.
So I do think that having that as an addendum, I think I'll be interested to see what ends up happening because Minneapolis.
His ass should go to jail. I'm glad they charged him. He's a criminal. He perpetrated murder on Patrick, and as Charles said too, that the police really have no obligation to protect the public. And sometimes they absolutely act as if they do not. And I think that these type of crimes, AK, further perpetuate the notion of wanting to rid police departments in certain cities. I think that, again, we're going to have another referendum come up like this again. I mean, I think these things are here to stay, and not only here in other police departments. And we're going to have some police department in the state, in the U.S., some state that is going to rid itself of a police department because of these actions right here. It's sad. Crime is increasing, so we have to have police presence and police there. But we don't need rogue officers that treat us and have a reckless disregard. And I keep using it because that's the exact word that they have. That's exactly what they do. They have a reckless disregard for our lives. And those officers can't be on our police department.
I will say again, I believe in our justice system. And
I do not.
You're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, he is proven guilty.
And so until he's proven guilty, I want to see what his rationale was for why he felt that he could use lethal force when he already discharged his taser. But we do have a great guest lined up for today.
And that's why we brought him here to talk about the different crimes that are going on across the state and the city. And then the reason I really brought this guy on is because he's the quintessential reason of the notion of get out and vote, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He lost his last race literally by 1 vote.
Yeah.
Right? And so folks have got to get your butts out of your seats and into those polling booths to support folks like Hollis Winston and whoever you're voting for, because literally your vote does count. So welcome to the show tonight, candidate for mayor of Brooklyn Park, Hollis Winston. How are you, Hollis?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bro. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure, bro.
It's nice to meet you, Hollis, man.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Hollis, man, we were as I just had mentioned, you lost the race. Was it last year already? 2 years ago?
It was last year.
Last year already.
Special election.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. It was a special election because the commissioner, the former mayor, is now commissioner, right, or something.
Right.
You literally lost by 1 vote. 1 vote. How the hell did that make you feel, bro?
Well, I mean, of course, it it makes you feel awful. But I would say, special elections are a little bit different than regular elections, right? Especially in the suburbs. So normally 28,000 people vote. Only 7,000 voted in this election. And it didn't really represent what we normally see. The turnout didn't represent what we would normally see in a regular election. And the demographics were very different, right? So I would say they were much more conservative, and they were concentrated in a specific area within Brooklyn Park, which we know that can't be replicated in a general election. So in some ways, it was a really tough loss because we worked really hard at that. And another, we've made up a lot of ground from from folks who have run in the past, kind of under the same banner I've run under. And it also, there's a silver lining. I think when you win by 1 or 2 or 3 votes, you kind of say, well, I'm gonna replicate this. And what we saw is, we've been having conversations with people in Huntington Place and other folks in the southern part of Brooklyn Park that are dealing with some specific issues, and we probably would not have had the capacity to do that. So I think it was an opportunity to talk to those folks, help them mobilize and kind of step away, and let them kind of advocate for themselves. But there's a silver lining in that we found some things that really needed to be addressed.
One of our guests posed a question earlier, and it's funny that you bring that up because they wanted to know, what your plan for, as folks call it, the HPs out there, right? Because I mean, when we talk about crime increasing, this has always been a troublesome type of apartment unit, and lots of police calls, lots of activities to go on there. So if you are elected, this is probably one of your problem-prone areas. What do you do about that? Because people, in fact, I just seen an article about people complaining about bugs and things of that nature that are going on there. So how do we fix that, as the mayor?
Well, I think, progressives have the saying, we all do better when we all do better. I think we all feel safer when we all feel safer.
Correct.
And so when you look at Huntington Place and you look at some of the issues they're dealing with, the crime and safety, and just the generally bad conditions of living, they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to live with the lack of safety. So I think you need to kind of start exploring, different models. And you also need to be very transparent about the issue. So the city of Brooklyn Park has said they're going to, they made $5 million available to the owners of Huntington Place. And then the county's going to give another $3 million.
Damn, for what?
If you look at what they're dealing with, it's actually a $30 to $40 million problem, and the issue, and it's not necessarily the people, it's management and it's accountability at all levels. But if you just do some basic math, I'm not going to go too far down that road. But if you say there's 6 buildings, so 3,000 people live in Huntington Place, right?
Okay.
865 units, 6 buildings. So if you say $1 million to get rid of the mold, people are getting sick from the mold, $1 million to get rid of the pests, another $1 million to move people out while you deal with some of those issues, and you can kind of do it in a tiered approach, right? Then you have to deal with some of the security issues. You got to redo the drywall, the painting, another $1 million, probably dealing with the replacing the plumbing because there's basically water leaking from people's ceilings, right? And then mice are falling down from that,
Oh.
So it's $5 or $6 million per building, right? So 6 times 6, 36 million. Then you got the security issue. So the reality is they have to kind of be honest. That means the people managing Huntington Place and the city has to be honest and say, this is not a $7 or $8 or $9 million issue. And until we get around this, right, it's going to continue to just come back. And so if you're talking about working with the governor or the state senate or the state house, that is an investment that if you're going to have a bonding bill for 30 or 40 million or 20 million, it makes sense for something like that. Because if you look at how much it's costing people in terms of safety, lives, education, but even if you're just a homeowner out there and you say, well, homes in Brooklyn Park, the value rises by 2% a year. In some of the surrounding suburbs, it's twice that, right? Or at minimum 3 or 4%. Because we have a certain brand that our current administration and past administration just couldn't deal with and weren't willing to deal with, it's costing people who own homes out there. And so if you say most Americans' equity or value comes from their homes, right? You have to deal with this issue. So I outlined the issue just to make it clear what we're dealing with. I think in terms of dealing it, to answer your question directly, they have security there, but the security really checks people when they come in and then they get deployed whenever there's an issue, but they're not in the buildings, right?
That's a problem.
You have to have a security.
Absolutely.
You have to have a security that is comfortable, that looks like the folks that live there,
that
understands the issues they're dealing with, and that walks the buildings, because people are coming out to homeless people sleeping in the halls and all sorts of issues. So you have to have a security that not only is up front, but that's walking throughout and that's actively connecting people to certain resources, right?
Yes.
So I mean, that would be my deal. And then what the residents will tell you is, we know there's crime here. We know that people come from other apartment complexes here. and they start issues, and they stay overnight, we know that people come from outside the city and they cause issues. And then we know we got people that are that have issues here. No one is holding accountable. There's no one here to deal with it. So they know that and they don't want to live with that. So I think if you addressed it, and that's just one aspect, that security aspect, I think if you addressed it seriously, you would cut crime in half, right? And then you would have Brooklyn Park actually be a model in terms of how to deal with these issues. But as long as you talk around it, you try to sweep it under the rug, or you don't deal with it, it's just going to continue to fester. And the residents know that better than anybody else.
So, Hollis, I wanted to ask you, obviously when you ran during that special, you had a specific reason. After seeing the person that won and having some time, not a lot of time, right? Because I think the special was in like December or something, or something?
August. I will never forget.
August. August. Because you're running again, do you feel that really nothing has changed in the ways that matter to you? And then secondly, like what are your issues? Like why are you running? Like what do you want to be able to provide to the city that you feel is not being provided?
So I would say, the issues that I was concerned about, right? This public safety issue that we kind of saw festering up, and I think a lot of the residents, they saw it festering up. There's been no real response to it, right? So we may get a grant for a couple $1 million and give it to someone who says they're going to help push down crime, but we don't really invest in creative models to push down crime. And that helps us change this vision of Brooklyn Park so that we can have other investment here. I think at base, the reason I run is, my story isn't that different from a lot of African Americans, in that, my family came from down south, Mississippi and Arkansas. They saw lynchings. They went to Chicago and made good in Chicago. And then they moved to Minnesota for even more opportunity, and they were able to pass that on to me. And I think when I look at Brooklyn Park and the opportunities that we could have for everybody, we're not really capitalizing on it. So that's the thing that moved me to get involved in politics. I think that the issues that are driving me this election are public safety. So coming up with this model that really gets ahead of it, that gets people the resources they need, that does fully fund the police, but also provides this extra security element for some of the apartments in the areas that we're dealing with. And when I say extra security, I mean people who are trained in de-escalation, people who are trained in tactics, people who know how to communicate with the police, to work with the police. So that's a very important aspect, because I just feel like, unlike maybe other surrounding cities or cities that are close by, we have a opportunity in Brooklyn Park to really get that right and to help future generations. And then, the other thing is, I consultant, work with small businesses, advocate on behalf of small businesses, and I think there's an opportunity to start a ecosystem of businesses out here that really create wealth throughout the community. And when I say community, I mean, Brooklyn Park is extremely diverse, and that diversity includes everything from, Liberian community, Kenyan community, Hmong community, to white folks, right, who have been here a few hundred years. So I think it can unlock wealth and a quality of living in Brooklyn Park that's needed, because our property taxes disproportionately fall on homeowners, because we don't have enough businesses out here given our size and the rate at which we're growing. So for me, I think those two issues, that public safety, getting around that, and then getting enough businesses to start driving down those property taxes are two of the bigger issues that we're really dealing with. And then there's transportation and some other important issues, but I think those are the ones that we really have to get our arms around.
So is crime and poverty an issue out in BP? Because I remember, I've lived here long enough to remember when in the early 90s, Brooklyn Park was all posh, and I lived over south, and my mom didn't go, where are you driving way out there? Because remember how far Brooklyn Park was, right? And you kind of were unwanted out there. You knew not to, and especially now at night, you don't drive through BP either. But anyway, so how do we change that better for black and brown folks, or folks that are, because again, the home ownership is not high out there for black and brown folks. How do we change that narrative to make more homeowners, black and brown folks, and then try to drive down, because obviously if crime decreases, property taxes property values increase. So how do we do that? I mean, and it's a small city, so of course a lot of the onus is going to fall on you when it's a lot more people that have to do it, but the onus will fall on you.
So I think that the economics of it come before the home ownership, right? And I was talking to someone who an African American who works in the home mortgage arena. They deal with the finance, and so they're seeing these disparities at a level that at a close up level, right? And I think part of it is, yes, we have to create more Black immigrant people of color owned businesses because that's one way to get wealth to people, but not necessarily everyone is going to want to start a business. But I think it's going to take the whole community. So kind of saying, hey, look, we have this diversity in Brooklyn Park. How do we find ways to use that, working with folks who've traditionally been in Brooklyn Park, to create business models that bring people from other suburbs, right? And then folks who want to come from Minneapolis and have a bite to eat. How do we create that so that we create more, newer businesses here, right? And I think we've never, as a city, kind of comprehensively said, let's come up with a way that creates an ecosystem to do that. We've kind of piecemealed it, right? But if you look at like a Maple Grove, you look at Brooklyn Center even, right? Brooklyn Center is struggling with some issues. But if you look at Brooklyn Center, one thing they have done is they said, okay, we have these opportunities to redo this and get this right. How do we sit down and do this so that at a high level, all ships are rising? So I think that's the first thing, is saying, how do we find something that creates the sum is greater than the parts? And that's not necessarily easy, but we at least have to start tackling it. I think the second aspect of it is, you're right. We do deal with poverty. And when you look at Huntington Place and you look at some of the youth there, they don't feel connected. Their parents don't feel connected to the city. And so
Correct.
When you have, companies here, like there's a Tesla here, and, Target has kind of their headquarters, kind of their IT headquarters here, right? It depends on how you look at it, right? But you have Fortune 500s here. You have these larger companies, and there's no connection. We've given them, TIF financing and tax breaks, right? And there's no connection really between them and, hey, can you set up some internships? Can you get some kids some scholarships, maybe even to North Hennepin, and give them some of the skill sets so that when they leave, they can at least be on track to work for you. So I think tapping into that is going to be huge, because you have to get people to check. You got to get them the wealth first, and then they get the house, right? Otherwise, you put them in a situation where it's hard for them to maintain that house. So for me, it's one of the big reasons I ran, because my family has dealt with all sides of that. So on my grandfather's side, he was a meat cutter by day, and then he had a tavern, and he died when my dad was 12. But because he did well enough, my dad was able to go to some good schools. And then my dad went to the corporate level and became a lawyer for NSP, kind of dating myself, but NSP, which is,
you are dating yourself.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So he ended up going over there, but the reality is both sides of that, owning that business allowed someone to say, I'm going to go corporate. And then him going corporate said, okay, son, well, you can consider business, right? So we have to connect our community to both sides of that. It can't be just, for African Americans or PLC communities, we got to start businesses and work our way out of it through businesses. There's got to be, you've got to connect people to these very wealthy networks in Minnesota, which is what makes Minnesota really special, right? You go to other states and you say, how many Fortune 500s do you have per capita? Well, we've got more probably than almost any other state out there.
No doubt about it.
If you control for population.
And I was just about to say, I'm sorry, okay. I was just about to say too, is you're absolutely right, is that the average start time for a business, the length is 0 to 3 years. So you're absolutely right to say, okay, we're going to start a business, fine, but then there has to be resources to help those businesses, continue, and not just folks patronizing them, but learning how to run a business, right? Because I think that's important. And so we have these great ideas of getting businesses, but we do sometimes need, this county and the cities to help us run them.
So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the issues that we look at, so a lot of business, especially in the Black community, that say, well, look, I don't have the capital to start it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of business is also your network, right? So we have not always been privy to those networks, and we don't even know that if I start a business, it's going to be very difficult if I don't build a certain type of network. And that network is building relationships that people trust. So people say, you do this and you do well, and then they say, okay, well, I'm going to introduce you to 20 other people, right? I'm going to keep your name in my mouth because you did a great job. So I think us breaking into the network can be difficult. So we have to kind of help people break through and understand this is how you network, but also invite those networks to say, hey, there's some growth opportunities over here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure you're aware of what's going on in these communities as well.
That's right.
So I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the prime, every area is experiencing an uptick of crime, and being that Minneapolis and Brooklyn Park are right there, are you being affected by people that are coming from Minneapolis in some way, shape, or form, and kind of like the violence spreading out? Because I remember hearing a handful of stories. And I know sometimes people mix up Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park, right? Because they both have Brooklyn in them. But I know that Brooklyn Park has been kind of hit by the crime. A lot of it that stems from really gang violence that spills over, and gangs don't have boundaries to necessarily cities. It's neighborhoods, and people are trans. They're able to move around. So for you in your police department and in the way that the mayor's set up, what are some things that you would do to kind of try and handle and get your hands around the situation when it comes to people that are coming that don't even live in Brooklyn Park?
Yeah, I think it's not always, I mean, so you have people who are related, right? And that's part of it. People go back and forth, and they hear about different opportunities to maybe take advantage or do different things, right? So I think stopping that is difficult until you deal with some of the ground issues or the base issues, right? So if you have in a place like Huntington Place, which they're asking for, they're saying, look, we want active security, walking through the halls, talking to people, getting people resources, right? You begin to take away some of the reasons people might want to get involved in that, right? You give people a different opportunity to move in a different direction. And there's just also this issue below 85th of there's not a lot for youth to do. So there's some youth programming.
Idle hands.
Brooklyn Park had issue with crime about 10 or 15 years ago. And I think right before the previous mayor got in, they made this huge investment in youth programming. Well, they've kind of fallen off of that. And if you look at Zanewood, which is below 85th, compared to the rec center off of 85th, right, it is seriously underfunded.
Yes.
Right? So part of that is, but like you said, idle hands. So you have to provide more funding. And then those youth have something to do.
Yeah.
So when somebody else comes around, they're not interested.
That's right.
I don't want to be involved with that, right? Plus, I've got other opportunities. Plus, my mother's gotten me involved some things because she's building her network out, and my father's building his network out. So I think if you deal with it in Brooklyn Park, it becomes a less hospitable place for people that want to come and start issues, especially if you have an active force, the police and the security working together through different apartment complexes, right? They're going to say, well, I really don't want to go to Brooklyn Park. They know who lives here. They know what's going on. They know I'm there to start trouble. I don't want to deal with that anymore. So they're going to go elsewhere, right? So I think that to me would be the way to do it, because we can control that investment, right? I can't necessarily control what you hear about in Minneapolis or Brooklyn Center or Robbinsdale or somewhere else, but I can control what we do in Brooklyn Park, and I can make it less hospitable for that.
What have you guys been able to do when it comes to your law enforcement? Because from what I've kind of heard is that you guys don't have as many problems, and so is that something a testament to good policy that's been around, or is there something that you would want to change within that current model?
Well, I would say maybe 2 years ago, right? But this year, crime is extremely high, and and some people are saying it's an all-time high in certain areas below 85th. And so when you look at Brooklyn Park, right? Brooklyn Park is in some ways it's segregated. So below, when you get below 85th, there's a lot of apartments and folks, trying to work their way up, and then you get above, to like 109th, and you've got $500,000-$600,000 homes. So I think part of it is, in some areas, because folks are doing so well, you're not going to necessarily see that crime. In other areas, people are struggling, figuring it out, and then you have this issue of some folks coming in. So I don't think necessarily a great job has been done in terms of pushing it down with the current administration, because we're seeing it at a record level. And I get that it's happening all over, but in Brooklyn Park, it's hitting record levels.
Yeah.
Compared to what we've seen in the past. And that's a direct result of not really understanding the problem and not being capable of understanding the issue. And then it's also a result of you haven't invested in youth.
That's right.
Enough.
That's
you
right.
Haven't put enough programs. And I'll say this. The management company that owns Huntington Place is being put in a difficult situation. Now, I think they have to do a better job in terms of managing Huntington Place. They've got to learn how to engage the folks there a lot better. But when you have a city council that has lived with the problem longer than the management company that's there, because they've only had it 2 years. City council has eyes on this for a long time, and they know it's a $30 to $40 million problem. And they keep trying to sweep it under the rug because they're saying if we keep it quiet, maybe this won't hurt our reputation. You got to make the problem obvious and transparent so that you can get it fixed. Because there's people throughout the state, both parties, that will say, you got a little crime problem. Okay, well, if you're willing to work on it, we're willing to work with you on it, because nobody wants to deal with these public safety issues, right? I mean, nobody wants to have to fear because public safety isn't there, right? So I think a lot of it goes to the city council because they knew about this issue, but they've never been honest with the price tag. So people come in there and they say, this is a $30-40 million problem. You're going to give me, what was it, 8 million or 9 million? What's that going to do? It's some window dressing. The reality is there's some deeper issues that the city council has to address.
No doubt about it. There's not much to do in Brooklyn Park. I mean, we lived out there on Brooklyn Boulevard, right off of 76 in Hampshire, in those nice townhouses. We lived out there for about 5 years. There's nothing to do. And this was back in the 90s, into the 2000s. There's nothing out there to do. And so crime was not high as it is now, but again, idle hands. You're asking for trouble when there's nothing for kids to do. You need more than the Zanewood, like you said, which is almost a piece of crap. I see they're doing, is that construction they're doing the Zanewood or some building next to it? I'm not sure. That's the building next to it.
And that's the issue.
That's crazy.
I haven't seen a lot with the building, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen a lot with the building. With Huntington Place, which is right behind
it, yeah.
They built like a new fence, right?
Ooh, yeah, to keep it away, exactly. Stop.
I mean, you're creating the projects, though, right? And at some point, that's why I say we all feel safer when we all feel safer. Because if you lock something in, right, and you say it's never gonna get out, these people are never gonna get out, right? Those people are you.
Yes.
That's us.
That's right.
That's one community. So at some point, you're going to start seeing these issues come out. And the community is saying, hey, look, we don't want to deal with this stuff either. Help us out. Provide some leadership, right? Let's make this a village effort so that we can all get our hands around it. And I promise you, if that's dealt with, if some of those issues are dealt with, you're going to cut crime in half.
We've got you for
crime in half for a long time.
We've got you for about 8 more minutes here. Let me ask you a question, because this kind of goes into what you were just saying. Now, when we looked at after the killing of the Brooklyn Park young man, it's all becoming a blur. Brooklyn Center. I'm sorry.
Right.
What's his name?
Dante Wright.
Dante Wright. After the killing of Dante Wright, the mayor had to get more power. Now, obviously, some of us in our community looked as if that maybe if this guy weren't black, that he would have been given the power that a mayor should have, period. Two things you've said. Sounds like you're going to already have to go to battle with the city council about Huntington and other places because they're stuck in the notion of see no evil, hear no evil. What are you talking about? So you're going to have to battle with them on that. So that means that's going to make it to a pretentious relationship with you and the city council. Hopefully not, but it sounds like they will because they're, kind of stuck on their ass. Will it be the same for you will the city council have to come in and give you power, or what real power will you have to do any of these things? Because again, bro, it looks to me like, I mean, no, it's not Minneapolis. It's not huge like Minneapolis, but why did that mayor have to be given more power by the city council, and will you have to be given more power by the city council? What real power will you have?
I don't necessarily think so. I think, you know, as mayor, like my vote, because we have, you know, our mayoral system is weak mayor system, so my vote is equal to the other 6 people on the city council. However, we do have city council races up as well, so hopefully folks pick the right people, and then we get people who understand that this is a very urgent issue. It's one of our top issues. But I think 2 things. So I spoke to someone who's a candidate for our new police chief. So our old police chief is stepping down, and you know, he had a good approach in terms of saying, hey, we've really got to build trust with the community. We've got to begin to understand the community's issues at a granular level so that we can avoid some of what we're seeing in other cities. So I think if you have a police chief that is speaking that and then actually lives that out, that will go a long way in terms of providing a lot of the support that Huntington Place and other folks need, right? And that the city is really looking for in terms of leadership. So I would think that, and then I would think the mayor helps make the agenda, and then the mayor is kind of the voice of the city, right? And so when I'm going to doors and I'm talking to people, and people are increasingly saying, you know, I'm not really satisfied with the leadership. I wish you had won. And this crime thing is really scaring them because they're saying, I'm tired of my city being seen this way. Plus, it's affecting the value of my house, right? So we need to address these issues, and they're willing to get out there and be more and more vocal. And you'll see that from a lot of residents in Brooklyn Park. They're going to start getting more vocal about this stuff. And it's not because I put them up to it. They're sick of it, right? So I think if you have residents that are involved, I don't necessarily have to go the route of Mayor Elliott in terms of getting more power, because I think other city councilors will say, you know, we hear what the community is saying. It's clearly an issue. Let's deal with it head on and come up with a coalition that can address this. I think a lot of what has happened in Brooklyn Park is, you know, leadership matters, and we haven't had leadership that has been able to deal with these issues, because we saw these issues coming 8-10 years ago, right? So we knew this was coming. There's people that, some of us talking about this 4 or 5 years ago saying, yeah, crime is down now. It's going to jump back up because you've cut the fund. You're not doing the same funding with youth, and you've got these issues that are festering. So I think it's a leadership thing, and I don't think we have to go out there and require all that extra power. I think we can build a coalition.
So, okay, one more question here for you, bro. Being a black man, and Brooklyn Park is increasingly, you know, browning, you know. So being black, you know, I think you're going to win this time. I think the 3rd time is a damn charm, right? Being black, does that give you a better perspective on how to handle the crime in that area? Because again, as a black man, I would think that, you know, with the crime, I'm going to say, okay, here's a black man. So seriously, Hollis, will that, or does that give you a better perspective on how to handle crime because you're black?
I think it gives me a different perspective. I think it's in some ways more well-rounded because I don't have the same, some folks, I'm not gonna say all, have a preconceived notion of where crime is coming from, how our community feels about crime, how we wish to deal with crime. I think Minneapolis made it clear, the black community kind of helped lead that effort, saying, hey, we don't want to disband the police.
Yeah, because it's happening in our communities, right?
Yeah.
It's happening in our community, right? I mean, I remember talking to my mother saying, I hope they don't do it. You know, so and she lives in Arizona. Right?
Oh, really?
So, and my father said the same thing. I don't know what's going on out there, but I hope they don't do it. You know, I said, well, I'm in Brooklyn Park. So, but you know, the reality is that I think people have an incorrect notion about how we feel about this. They have an incorrect notion about even how I feel about it. Right? I've always said fully fund, make it functional.
Yes.
Make it so that it works with the community, so that people know first name basis, and the kids know them on a first name basis in a positive fashion.
Do you believe in reform? Would you push for reform in your police department?
I would say you always want as much transparency as possible, and I think you wanna have it so that as more people come on board, it reflects the diversity within the community. And I think if the top candidate, right, follows through on that vision of saying we have to build a rapport and that has to be transparent, then I think that's where your reform is going to come. Right.
Word.
I think if you push for that, that's what's going to work.
Word.
Yeah, I liked a lot of what you've said. I think that you come from a very pragmatic and level-headed mindset. I think what you touched on makes sense. When I try and break this down to people, if you don't live in an area that experiences higher rates of crime, you have a misperception about what crime is and how often and where, like what percentage. And so I always like to give this stat out to people that in the city of Minneapolis, when you look at what percentage of the population are actually committing crimes, and I'm not talking about just violent crime, I'm saying all crimes that are beyond like a speeding violation, it's only about 2.5% of the population that commits 100% of the crime. And it's no different no matter what community you go into. Now, the percentages might be a little bit less. So it might only be 0.5% if you go to, let's say, Woodbury or Maple Grove. But it's still the vast majority of people aren't committing crimes. You could grow up your whole life and never, ever commit a crime, and there could just be crime all around you because it's a very small percentage of people that are doing a lot of the crime. So I think that you bring this very interesting perspective because I think you understand that when you talk about these issues with policing, it's not like you need to have police kicking down every door. It is about building relationships. It's about understanding that these communities, they want to be able to be like everybody else. Like if you live in America, you want to do American things. You want to be able to protect your family. You want to be able to earn. You want to be able to experience the greatness of life. And you can't do that when you're being victimized by crime all the time. So I appreciate you for coming on the show, Hollis, and we'd love to have you back on the show another time for sure.
And tell us before you go, Hollis, where can people find you to donate, to help, and do anything in this campaign? Because November is going to be here pretty damn quick. So how can they help you?
But first, I want people to know I did agree with the Republicans, so I am bipartisan on something. But they can hit me up.
He crossed the aisle on the show. Damn it! That's a man. That's a man there.
HollisWinston.org. So HollisWinston.org is where they can go. They can find information. Folks can volunteer. They can donate. All of that information is there.
I can't wait for you to win, man. I'm supporting you. And look, if seriously, anything that you need me to do, if it's run this big old mouth of mine or do anything, door knock for you. You know, I got a bad knee, so I can only spend like an hour, 2 hour door knocking. But hey, I could come up with any type of spiel just like that. So I'll do anything to help you, bro.
We got phones. We got the phone banks, man. But you know, people will cuss you out on the phone quicker than at the door.
But see, I've been doing. Listen, Paul Wellstone. When I started phone banking back in 2002, Paul Wellstone he taught his own canvassing class and phone banking class. I swear to goodness he did. This was a great dude. So I've got the knack then. I got the knack. So man, thank you so much. Good luck, and please come back before the election.
I appreciate it. I'm honored.
Thank you, bro.
Y'all so much.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Man, he actually and he did agree with you. No, but you're right. That's we need level-headed guys like that to come into office. And so me, I'm not some uber progressive Democrat. I'm a Democrat. As I told you today, actually, I don't know. I think maybe I should announce on the show that I've decided that I'm not a DFLer.
Really?
No, I'm not a DFLer. I do not like what the party here does. They don't have the best interests of black and brown people, white, poor people. They're only beholden to themselves. I've seen too many countless efforts of them trying to keep the party for themselves and build their wealth, and of all colors, right? And so the party does not represent me anymore. The party doesn't represent a lot of people that I know. The things that they do, i.e. John, I have no shame in that being a glaring example of one of the reasons why I am not a DFL anymore, of how you treat someone and of color, right? I think that you should have been mindful of that too. And then not only that, but to treat them differently than anybody else that has not ever been treated that way as a Democrat or Republican is disgusting to me. And I could go into detail about some of the leadership of Democrats, but I won't. It's disgusting. And so I'm denouncing that I am not a DFL. I'm a strong Democrat. I will forever be a Democrat. I am not associated with the Minnesota DFL.
Well, that's interesting, man. It's funny because we've never just even on the show, we've never really had an in-depth conversation about how, you feel your role is with the DFL. Because here's the thing I've noticed about a lot of Democrats in Minnesota. It's like you said, like you more or less follow the National Democrat, but there's a lot of folks that I feel like the DFL party it's strange in Minnesota, man. Like the endorsement doesn't have as much power, especially compared to the Republican Party, MNGOP. MNGOP has got the state locked down, but the DFL really doesn't. Like, I think the Democrats say, oh, okay, I'm going to come out for this or whatever it might be. And that's always been so interesting to me because there is that dynamic. Like you are a proud Joe Biden supporter, you're a proud Obama supporter. But, like just watching the show, look at the DFLers that come on our show. There's not a lot of them.
There's not a lot of them.
And it's always been kind of wild to me. But I think it's important for whatever someone's political ideology is that they stand by what their principles are. They push back on the things that they don't like. And you don't have to compromise what your values are. And I think that's what the show's really always been about, is that we stand by what we believe and we have these difficult conversations. With that in mind, again, I want to shout out our new sponsor, Dennis Smith Law Office. Again, he supports our mission to bring back civility and have these type of conversations about these difficult political issues while still walking away, respecting each other as human beings and not seeing each other as evil. Now, if you have any issues with wanting to know more about having a will, having a healthcare directive, having a trust set up, if you're not sure, like, well, what is a trust? I myself know a lot about these end-of-life issues, and it's important to make sure that you have everything together. Make sure to contact Dennis Smith. Reach out to him at 612-889-3971 or send him an email, dennis@smithlawmn.com. Again, dennis@smithlawmn.com. Give him a call and be able to help you out. We're going to have Dennis on the show because these are actually issues that have always been, not always, but since I got involved in the insurance industry, which I'm not in anymore, but these end-of-life issues are important. A lot of people have a lot of misperceptions about what happens when someone passes away, what is a will, what is a trust, and they will truly impact your life. People talk about going to court and having a fight with friends and family.
Look at Prince.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Prince, exactly.
Yeah.
And people have a misperception.
He didn't leave a will.
Right. Well, he had a will, but it was weird. But he also didn't have a trust. If he would have had a trust, it would have been completely different.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not a lawyer, but please reach out to Dennis. And again, we'll have him on the show. So please reach out to him. He's a new sponsor. And if you're feeling thirsty, you need some postage, please check out the Weber Mart.
The Weber Mart.
The Weber Mart.
The Weber Mart. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thanks. Great sponsors, the Weber Mart and the Dennis Law Firm. And thank you for being a great co-host, and thank Hollis Winston on his third run for Brooklyn Park Mayor. Again, I hope the third time is a charm. I absolutely am willing to do everything for you, Hollis, to make sure that you win, bro. And thank you guys for every Wednesday giving us an hour or more of your time. And then, you know what I love too? It's how we used to worry how there would be, 3, 4, 5, 6 people watching at the time of the show, live. But when you go back, what we love to do is to go back later on tonight and see that 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 people have all of a sudden watch the show.
Oh,
so
let me also add this as well. Our show started a lot later than usual. And
yes,
that's because
start time.
We have changed our start time.
That's right.
To be 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. So
CP time.
Make sure that you spread the news. We're gonna kind of put out some stuff out there because I know a lot of people tune in right at 8 and everything like that. And again, if you like the political discourse that we have, make sure to hit up our Linktree. Consider becoming a subscriber to our Patreon to continue the show that we do.
You could even sit in that chair over there. You become a big enough sponsor. You can sit right there in that chair right there and argue with me or argue with this guy about whatever topic. So help us keep political discourse alive by donating to the show. Contributions help that. And it helps these folks that are on the camera and the greatest producers that we have. It helps them. So help us help them.
Yeah, man, we got some good shows lined up for the future.
We got a great rest of the month, and then July is going to be like fireworks.
Oh, because we got Juneteenth, and then we got 4th of July. I mean, 2 great months.
And then my birthday.
And our birthdays. Yeah, it's just great time.
Of course, June is great.
I'm A.K. Kamara.
I'm Jamar. We did that to, sync, jinx. See y'all next week.
Take care.